My name is Stephen King.
You're not thinking about going down in there.
Welcome to Filmstrip and our reviews of selected works of Stephen King featuring Nick.
We're like shrimp in an all-you-can-eat salad bar, and that thing ain't stopping till it's full.
And Jay.
Just ain't no job worth this.
These podcasts will be spoiler-filled and contain in-depth discussions of the plots, characters, and themes.
That might be the understatement of the year.
All content used or discussed in this podcast is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.
I'm going to scare the hell out of you.
Welcome to Filmstrip. I'm Jay.
And I'm Nick.
And welcome back to our selected works of Stephen King retrospective and our review of Graveyard Shift, starring David Andrews, Kelly Wolf, Stephen Mock, and Brad Dourif. Directed by Ralph S. Singleton, released in December of 1990 on a budget of $10.5 million. It grossed $11.5 million at the box office. So, the thing about this one, Nick, I've never seen this before. I thought I had, but for some reason I confused this with The Mangler. Have you seen it, or have you read the short story it's based on?
I've seen it and read the short story. Read the short story a few years ago. I happened to see this in the early 90s. I don't know if you remember back when grocery stores used to have their rental section for movies and stuff. Our local Pick and Save had one. And I remember me and my dad picking this up right when it came out on VHS and watching it that night. And I don't remember much of it. I just remember a few scenes with a big giant rat thing and a guy getting his arm bit off in a cave, and that was about it.
Yeah, I had no connection to this whatsoever. Like I said, I did happen to listen to the audio version of the Graveyard Shift short story. It's actually on YouTube in 3 parts. You can just listen to some guy read it or whatever. It's pretty good. The story, I will say, is pretty neat. And I'm going to say this now. I can't think of a time when a short story from Stephen King was adapted to a full-length feature and it worked as a full-length feature. There's a reason short stories have a hard time, being embellished to the full 80-minute runtime, and this is a typical example of that. There's a lot in this film that just seems to be there to hold time and waste time. Because the story is pretty straightforward, but this film is anything but that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's very weird how the story kind of progresses throughout the whole thing. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it in a little bit, but part that kind of struck me was just how a lot of Stephen King movies, at least you have someone recognizable in the movie itself, any movie that he does, at least you have someone. I mean, you watch The Stand, and Gary Sinise is in it, or you watch even The Langoliers, and you got the guy from The Green Mile in there. I forget what his name is right now, but this movie had nobody I could recognize in it at all, except for the foreman who we were talking about. Kind of reminds us of Fred Ward from Trimmers, except for with the accent.
That's funny you mentioned that, because I recognize two of these people. David Andrews, I always associate with his turn as the general in Terminator 3 that set Skynet into the internet or whatever. But he's been in a lot of stuff. He's a character actor. He's been around for years, done a lot of stuff. And man, Brad Dourif, the voice of Chucky.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Brad Dourif.
And many other crazy things that he's done. But before that, he was actually a dramatic actor. If you've ever seen Heaven's Gate, I mean, he's a big role in that. So, I mean, Brad Dourif is one of those, I always recognize that face. You can't not recognize it, I think, if you've seen it. And the voice, too. So, but I'm with you. Usually you see bigger stars, and nothing against these people in their acting careers, but none of these people are, leading the charge for top grossing A-listers. These are character actors that you throw in a story, and that can work on some level if the story can sustain them. I guess we can talk about whether or not this one does, but before we get any further into it, why don't we do a plot summary? Will you please?
When an abandoned textile mill is reopened, several employees meet mysterious deaths. The link between the killings all occurred between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., the graveyard shift. Warwick, the sadistic mill foreman, has chosen the newly hired drifter, John Hall, to help a group clean up the mill's rat-infested basement. The workers find a subterranean maze of tunnels leading to the cemetery and an unimaginable horror that comes alive in the dead of night. John and his group discovered a giant rat, which proceeds to pick off the group one by one. The monster rat gets his tail caught in an industrial machine. John turns it on, and the creature is dragged into the machine and slaughtered. The end.
Yeah, that's about as simple as you can sum it up. And I wish this film was that concise. But we get a lot of time of Brad Dourif as the exterminator talking about killing rats like they're from Vietnam, and a lot of John Hall and one of his sweaty coworkers semi-romancing one another, and a whole lot of that foreman being like the dick boss of all time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the first almost 45 minutes of this movie, I mean, you get a couple off-screen kills in here, but it's very poor character development. I mean, I see what they're trying to do, where you get to meet this guy named John Hall, and he's a college boy, and they're trying to kind of set up a little semi relationship between him and the female worker there, and they're kind of showing you the foreman and just how big of a dick he is, and just how he kind of treats everybody like crap and everything. But it's just, that's not what we're here for. We're here to see some big giant rat kill these people, and it really doesn't even get going until probably, I don't know, half hour left in the movie.
Oh, I mean, it's a total tease. The opening scene is the guy running the picker, which if you've never been in the cotton gin, it's got these rows of teeth that sort of pick apart the big rows of cotton and stretch them out. It's how they turn it into
Whoever thought that was a good idea for a machine? I mean, you look at that thing and it's it's really, I mean, that thing is a death trap.
Oh, yeah. And I will say, having grown up in an area where we had a lot of textile mills, that's a greatly exaggerated version of what one of them can do. But it is indeed a danger to your hands. You get it too close and you're not paying attention. But this guy is I wrote down in my notes, this is the serial murdering school teacher in training. Because he picks up these rats gather to watch him do his job. And it's like an episode of The Muppets or Fraggle Rock, where they're all sort of watching from the balcony, and he picks up one of them and throws it in the machine and said, "Thus ends today's lesson. Oh, we need another?" And he picks up another one, only to be attacked by something off screen. And I'm like, wow, that's like something straight out of the opening from Tales from the Crypt.
I mean, how could you not expect some guy to even become kind of crazy working in that thing? I mean, how many freaking rats were in that room? I mean, there was hundreds and hundreds of rats. I mean, just think of the disease and the filth that's down in there. It's shit, man. I'd probably be a pissed off psycho too if I had to work in that conditions.
Well, I wrote in here later that they talk about the rat infestation problem, and I don't really know if this movie is that people are working where rats have infested, or that the rats are infested by people who seem to be getting in the building that they own. Because the rats outnumber the people in this cast by at least 6-1. And I mean, I'm talking about big rats too. They got some huge stunt rats for this film. I mean, these are big rats.
Oh, definitely. I mean, even when we're talking about the first scene where he's throwing them in there, when they see them all on the ledge, all kind of watching them. I mean, that's almost it's pretty freaky when you see them all. So they're all just lined up perfectly. I kind of wonder how they actually did that.
Oh man, Hollywood animal stunt wranglers are amazing with what they can do. That's I was thinking to myself, I'm like, man, that's where most of the budget had to go, was whoever the heck did that. These are the rats needed names and should have been credited. There was the lead rat, and then there was the big greasy monster rat bat thing, which we're going to talk about. Is that a rat or is that a bat later? But all this other stuff too. It's all that whole setup is creepy. I think the thing is there's an element of creepy here that could work. And you said it. Imagine how nasty it would be to work in a place like that. I can imagine if I saw or found a rat in my office now, the amount of freak out that would go on around my coworkers, and probably me too, would be oh man, everything I've gotta move it out of here. Torch the place to the ground. That's how we tend to react. I can't imagine where there's thousands of them seemingly everywhere. But you know what? It's the quietest place in the world. If there's anything I know about rats, they are not quiet animals. I mean, they step around and they're squeaking all the time. I don't know how these people could take a step without hitting a rat in that textile mill.
Yeah, I mean, they're everywhere, man. It's insane.
It's very, very weird. But the opening, this whole thing, right after that, though, I'm like, man, this does feel like a cheap TV movie too, doesn't it? I mean, they've got this set and it's sort of through this dilapidated graveyard, which is an extra thrown away part of the Pet Cemetery set. And it's just really they've got the woo music and all this stuff. And I'm going, man, whatever mood they're trying to create here is not working. I actually had to pause the movie at this point because I was like, who is this director? What else has he done? And the answer to that is nothing. The guy never directed anything else. He's been like a part of crews on televisions and on television shows and movies sets for years. Still works today, set production and all that kind of stuff. But his directorial debut for films is this one. And he directed some episodes of Cagney and Lacey in the 1980s, if you remember that. But other than that, he is like the second unit director on stuff like, I don't know, Network and Taxi Driver and, the Death Wish. That's kind of what he did. And then he's, production manager. He is not a director. You can tell this feels like it's in the hands of somebody that they got for cheap, because the only money they looked like they were willing to spend here was on the rats.
Yeah. I mean, what was the budget? $10.5 million.
Exactly. Which is,
anything.
In 1989, 1990, that's pretty cheap. I mean, that even for a horror film, that is dirt cheap. And I'm sure they thought, like every other horror film, we can put $15 million in this, we'll get 50 out of it. No. They didn't even make money off this. They made $11.5 million on this. That means they lost money. I mean, there's no way. This thing was a clunker all the way. And I'm sure a lot of people like you who rented it were quickly ready to just bring it right on back, because it's just nothing here. But we meet I guess he's our lead character, John Hall, David Andrews here, who, I mean, I'm going like, I get this whole David Banner, Incredible Hulk thing going off of him, don't you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Just kind of wandering from town to town. Just a guy who's down on his luck, but he means really well in everything he does.
Well,
Not a bad bone in his body.
But every look he gives those like locals who are just picking on him unmercifully, he gives them that look like you won't like me when I'm angry. I'm like, what? Who is this guy? I needed a little bit more on him than his wife had passed, and he was a college boy and was just sort of thumbing his way across America. And he got to Maine from West Virginia. That's a heck of a hike.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you meet him and it's like he almost has like a Tom Berenger look to him, doesn't he?
Oh, like a poor man's Tom Berenger, which is saying something. But yes, yeah.
Yeah. Then he gets the job there and stuff like that, and like right away, of course, like he's got the coworkers who don't like him, who don't get along with him, and probably one of the grossest scenes actually in the whole movie, probably the grossest scene for me, was when he's sitting down at the restaurant and those guys give him a plate and it's like a hamburger bun with a dead rat on it. That was that was just freaking really gross.
Yeah, they served him the dead rat. One of the I dare call them rednecks, because I didn't know that you could have rednecks in Maine, but I suppose you can. I'm from the South. I mean, I know rednecks, but this was definitely like Arkansas stereotypes that were thrown into this. But one of them, I don't know if you recognize him or not, the Wishmaster himself, Andrew Divoff, is one of the long-haired mullet one, is one of the bad coworkers. But yeah, they serve him up a rat. But the one that you really pay attention to is the foreman. I mean, you called him, he looked kind of like Fred Ward, but he was doing the voice of Fred Gwynn from Pet Sematary, which has been parodied in everything from South Park to, whatever else. They don't want to go up there. That's where the ground's hot. He's doing that really affected Maine accent. And I didn't get this guy. What movie was this guy in? Because I don't think he was in the same one everyone else was in.
Yeah, his character is like, I don't know. It's a really, really weird aspect in an already really weird movie. It's like, it's like over the top cartoonish evil with this guy in some ways. And it's like, you described it perfectly. He's like the perfect boss from hell, and it's everything he does. I mean, he's got like a female, he hits females. He's, terrible. He's laying off people, making them work in harsh conditions. And he's always like walking around and coming up to you at the worst possible times. I mean, perfect caricature of like the worst boss ever. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's just a dick, I guess. Well,
he's got the one woman that like apparently is his girlfriend that he does ultimately lay off, and he's got the other woman that works in the building that's like I called her the sweaty woman because she's always wearing half shirts and mom jeans, which was really weird. And he's hitting on her, and I don't know what his game is. Like I don't get this guy at all. Like I don't know. It was a strange portrayal. I guess he's supposed to be the jerk boss from hell that everybody has at some point, or the kind of sweatshop runner that you would think of for this. But in the end of the movie, he goes like Rambo down in that sewer. So I don't get what movie he thought he was in.
I still don't even know what his motivations are. It's like, as you said, like later he goes Rambo. It's just like, why? It's like he's down in this thing and like all of a sudden he starts going crazy and attacking everybody, and it's like, why? We understand that he's kind of a dick and stuff like that, but I don't know. Did you feel like he kind of knew what was going on with all the stuff, like with all the people getting killed? That he had somewhat of an idea that there was something down there?
That he was hiding it? Yeah, because...
I mean, people are going missing. People are going missing at this mill. Like, someone goes down there and gets torn apart, and then they just put like we're going to hire a new person to do it. Is there no investigation as to what happened to these people?
Well, the first thing is you've got the health inspector down there, and he slips him a couple $100 to, we'll get it done by the end of the 4th of July, and that sends that guy away. And then, I'm like, all the bodies or parts of bodies that are piling up here, he either knows or he just doesn't want to be bothered with it. It's all about getting out the next run of towels or whatever the hell they're producing there. I don't know. I mean, it would have made more sense if like he had dropped some line in that last 30 minutes where actually, they get into the basement and get into the catacombs and are chasing the thing or running from it, whatever you want to look at. And he said like, I knew she was down here all along, or something like that. Don't touch my pet, like it was his little pet Rancor or something. Maybe that would have worked, but as it is, I mean, he stabs a woman, he beats the crap out of the lead guy, then he goes after the rat bat thing with a knife, and he gets eaten. I mean, that's kind of it.
Yeah, it would have made more sense maybe, like, because we see like his girlfriend get killed by the thing, halfway through the movie, because obviously she has the worst balance in the world. As she goes walking down a stair, she falls, and you think okay, maybe like, that could have been like some type of motivation. Like he walked down there and like found like her necklace or something like that in blood. And he kind of put 2 and 2 together. And that's what kind of drove him insane. But no, you don't get any of that. It's just,
I think he was already insane.
Yeah, he was already insane, but he just like all of a sudden just goes bat nuts insane for, I don't know, no reason.
It's just like, because he read the script and this was the point where he was supposed to. I mean, really, that's the thing is this movie is populated with crazy people. All right, except for the lead. Like David Andrews' character, Hall, is the most normal one. All he's doing is hitching through town, making a few bucks, moving to the next one. Maybe he's on his way to Canada. I don't know. But, he's working his way up, and he seems to be the only one that's remotely put together. Everybody else is crazy. We already talked about the co-workers that tried to, feed him the rat, so they got their problems, right? You've got Kelly Wolf, who plays... Jane, the sweaty woman, who is hitting on him. She met him like 4 hours ago at the beginning of the shift, right? But the way she talks with the foreman, it's like they've gone down that road before. Did you get that feeling?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they've done that. So she's, clearly she's pretty loose morals. You've got the other guys running around there. You've got the I hate to say it, the token black guy to come in there and get killed later in the thing because he's just looking for work.
Hey, he wasn't the guy from Saved by the Bell, was he? The janitor?
I don't know if that was him or not, but he's there for a few minutes. And then you have the crazy foreman. You have the crazy guy at the beginning, like we talked about. You have the secretary who goes in and like, what does she do? She does some industrial espionage. Like she finds some paperwork or something that shows that he's not running the shop on the up and up. And so and then she gets killed by the rat. Yeah, that's the other thing too. I'm like, is the rat looking out for him? Yeah, they seem to be working in concert with one another.
Yeah, why was she even in there? What was she doing? Like, was she trying to get back at him? Like,
well, she had been fired, and so she got some paperwork out to see what. I guess she was going to dig up dirt on him and report it to who? Who the hell's in this town? There's nobody there except the 12 people we meet.
Yeah, and Brad Dourif.
Well, let's talk about him. Okay.
I mean, we could do a little bit of a rewrite of this movie. Actually, make it a lot better by them like covering up these deaths and stuff, and that she finds out, and then he fires her because of it, and then she's gonna expose it all. And it's like they totally skip over like the pretty logical steps this movie could have taken. Well, to make itself more plausible or whatever. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like a lot of stuff in there. Just there's like these half like they're leading up to something, and then they're just like, let's just do the next part.
Well, it is very. I guess paint by numbers is how it feels. I mean, it feels like someone who has worked a lot on television is directing what could be a television episode, but it's too long. There's stretches of just people sitting around staring at each other and looking at each other, and we got to talk about it now. The craziest person in here by far is Brad Dourif. Tucker, I'd call him the executioner. He's the exterminator, right? He's doing everything from like gassing the rats to sucking them out through a hose and dumping them in the river. I'm sure that's, good. I mean, he's going down there to investigate, and he essentially gets blackmailed into going into the basement for sacrifice because the foreman says, I know you suck those rats out through the hose. That'll get your license suspended, but go take care of this for me and we'll take care of all of it. And at that point, I started to wonder, is the foreman, like, did he raise this rat bat from Satan and this is the sacrifice? He must bring it every day or what?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like the movie has like kind of like all these like half-formed ideas that it never pays off. Like, what was the whole purpose of Brad Dourif's character? There's absolutely no purpose to his character at all in the movie.
Oh, he gets that weird monologue about being in Vietnam, and
which I thought that was pretty good.
Well, that was the best. I'm going to tell you, he's by far the best actor in this thing. Brad Dourif is a really good actor. He just chooses to be in a lot of shit. But that's, I mean, he can act, and he really can bring the weird and greasy and crazy. And I thought that was the best bit, the Vietnam bit. But then after that, I mean, I'm with you. What other purpose does he serve except to have a body count? Because this film does fall into the horror movie trope of like every 15 minutes they got to kill somebody.
Did he even get killed by the rat, though? He just slipped and a gravestone hit him.
It looked like the rat pushed the gravestone into his head.
See, I didn't get that at all. I thought he just kind of like the thing was kind of falling apart and he stepped on the wrong thing and also like something just shifted and smashed his head.
Well, that's really unsatisfying. I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was watching it. I'm like, oh, I thought, the rat exterminator, well, he's definitely got to have a big fight with them or something. It's got to be some major showdown. I mean, the rat's natural enemy has to be the exterminator. And to me, it's just like nothing happened. It's just like, oh, you're going to go in there and going to go work for me. And then he goes in there and he dies. And it's like, well, what was the point of sending him into that cemetery area? You have nothing to do with the cemetery area. I mean, I understand it's on the same compound for whatever reason. Worst place to build a freaking factory, by the way. But
let's talk about that. Okay, why is there always a graveyard, like, miles beneath the earth that they've tunneled into, and they discover all these loose graves and stuff? It's like the rat has built this From Dusk Till Dawn cave underneath that textile mill.
Oh, it's probably one of the most amazing compounds ever. I mean, you look at this textile thing, you think, okay, it's a couple floors, and then you got like this basement where the first scene happens. But no, there's something underneath that. So, and that's what they have to go clean out. It's like, it sounds like someone bought this textile mill and we're trying to, like, get it completely operational again. And they're like, okay, well, we got to clean out the sub basement. Well, not only is there a sub basement, there's a sub basement. And then beneath the sub basement is like the river.
Yeah.
And then like the sub basement actually goes beneath the river with like how everything just like, it's like a big tunnel operation down there. It's like, I don't know, it's something like, I don't know, like the stonemasons make this or something. I don't know. It's like,
yeah, I'm waiting for Tom Hanks to jump out of the side and start, describing the hieroglyphs at one point or another. I mean, it's really cavernous. And again, that's why I say that's like a whole different movie, because we learn all that in the last 20 minutes. This movie is the first 10 minutes of it with the setup, and it could be when they take them in the basement. And that's all you really need, because I want to tell you, everything that happens after Brad Dourif dies, I was bored. I was bored out of my mind watching this. I was like, I wrote it in my notes several times. Can we just get on with it? Come on, let's go. This is, let's get to it. There's way too many scenes of people with fire hoses spraying them at rats and going crazy with that, and lectures from the foreman. And it was really strange, man. The pacing of this movie sucked.
Yeah, it's all over the place, but I want to get even more with the caverns. I mean, I'm just thinking about even more right now. This is like a little town in Maine, and it's just got this huge who the hell made this thing? And how didn't anybody know about that?
Right, and yeah, like no one
How
noticed.
could nobody know?
Like no one noticed a shifting foundation underneath all the graves. Like
I mean, that is freaking impressive. I mean, if you actually like really think about it, just like think about the whole how that is laid out. That is one hell of an impressive complex. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just like that's the part that just gets me, and then it all connects to the back to the cemetery. It's like, wow, this is a pretty cool complex, and they only were using 2 floors. That is, I don't know, is the government using that thing? They're not getting their most value out of it.
Well, the thing is like we said, like I don't understand what the rats game is. Is it just trying to feed and survive? And where did it come from? And maybe I don't need its origin story, but a little bit of explanation would have helped. Like something. We get none of that. There's no answers. That's the problem. It's just these big sets and these grand matte paintings and then nothing else because they don't know anything else. I don't know. It feels really half-baked, and that could be a review for the whole thing right there. This is a real half-baked idea.
Yeah, I mean, they could have expanded on so much more of this stuff. I mean, as we were talking, like with the girl, the girlfriend, with the whole trying to figure out what's happening to people, to the foreman and the giant rat itself, to even this complex. I mean, they could have really expanded on some stuff. I mean, even as they're walking around the complex and going into these rooms, it's like there's some interesting stuff in there. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's just, to me, it just seems like everybody's like, this seems like it would be really cool to have in here, but let's just not explain anything or show anything, or we're just going to have it here because it's like cool looking.
It's horrific images for the sake of having them, but with no explanations to how they got there
and
or why any of it is what it is. Yeah.
Completely distracting because the whole time when I'm watching it, I'm just wondering, I'm like, when is this tunnel going to end? It's like almost like out of the video game Doom or something. It's just like it just keeps on going and going and going. And it's like, this is a hell of a complex.
Well, yeah, it goes to nowhere though. That's the problem, because this is the tunnel to nowhere until it's time to end the thing, and let's talk about as they get on down into it. They finally all get hired. The whole movie is the setup of the forum and picking out people to work this extra double overtime secret probation graveyard shift to clean this thing out before the end of the 4th of July or whatever. But it's the only characters we've met in the whole movie are the ones doing it. So it's no surprise as to who's going. And then when they finally all get down in there, then we start doing the slasher movie pickoff. One by one, they all get killed by the giant rat bat creature thing. And let me ask you that now. Like, how did that work for you? The fact that they never got really attacked as a group. They all seemed to get separated, and then something bad would happen to one of them, and the rest of them would come back and go, "Where'd Charlie go?"
Is there only one of these giant rats? Because to me, it's like, yeah, they're all getting picked off one by one, but this thing is everywhere at it's everywhere at every time. It's just like wherever it needs to be to pick off one of them is there, and it's like, this thing must have like magical teleporting powers. It can even appear behind a wall. I mean, well, I want to talk that scene too. It's like when we get like those guys running around the caves, and like the guy and the girl get split up from the foreman, the 2 other guys. The one, the black guy is all like, "Well, hey, I think I found the river. Let me, I got a good idea about this." And they climb up like this like little like slope in the caves, and he's like, "Oh, there's a hole. I'm gonna put my arm into the hole." Why would you put your arm into that hole? There's no reason to put your arm into a hole. It's nothing. It's stupid. And it's like, oh, of course it's behind there, and it bites off his arm.
Well,
and then also,
and besides that point, at that point, we'd already seen the guy open up the antique desk, and there's billions of rats that come out of there. Obviously, that's what's going to be behind there, at the very least.
Almost every little thing that there's no surprises in the movie at all. It's like when they open up the desk, there's rats there. They go down into the the cellar, and the guy falls. You knew the guy was going to fall through the stairs and go into the water. Of course, the rat's in the water.
Right. Like we see its feet sort of slink off into the water, and then it eats him. And let's just settle this now, okay? Because we're talking about it. I've called it both. Is it a bat or is it a rat?
It's got to be a rat because it has a tail.
But it's got wings and hooks and fangs.
And it's got a tail.
And it's got it is the weirdest creature ever.
I don't know. Maybe a rat bred with a bat, and that's its offspring.
Well, I mean, in that way, I've heard people call bats rats with wings sometimes. So, I mean, I think they're in the same family at least. But I don't know. In the story, it's really clear. It's like a blind, can't walk thing that does nothing but breed other rats. It's like the queen alien or something underneath the thing, which is even scarier. But all the rats, it breeds these like attack rats as part of its stuff. But I think there's only one of them. I really do. It's the same one in every shot. They just reveal more and more of it as they go, which, by the way, puppet effects or whatever they are, but that looked bad. You have to admit, that looked like it had been smeared with like the cheap brand of KY jelly to give it that greasy look.
Yeah, it seems like when they did the whole model work for this thing, it just probably didn't end up looking that good on its first run, so they just kept on adding more and more latex to it until you couldn't. It's like just a big blob of flesh. It's that's good enough.
Yeah, it has
a couple claws.
It has no hair on it. It's all skinless. It's just creepy. It's like it's supposed to be ick. I think that's the thing. This is the ick factor, right? That's what we want. But I'm not really getting it. I mean, again, it's the pick-off is happening, but everybody that's getting killed is getting killed because they're doing something stupid. They all seem to be making really bad choices.
Well, the first guy, what did he do? He ran up the stairs because why? Because he had spiders on him?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and then you're dealing with thousands of rats. Spiders wouldn't bug me at that point.
I think at that point, if you'd been in that kind of sweltering heat for that long, and I don't know, I guess if you're unbalanced, this is what happens. But that's what happens to him. And then like we said, the token guy, African American, sticks his arm through a hole and gets it bit off, so no surprise. Then Wishmaster is curled up over to the side, freaking out, and he lights a match or lights his lighter to light a cigarette or something, and then all of a sudden, there's the face of the rat, and it eats him and swallows him whole. That looked like a scene out of Anaconda, by the way, which is many years later, but is twice as funny as this movie.
Now, wouldn't it have been better at this point where maybe like the foreman like kind of runs at the rat, and maybe the rat like kind of like cuts him or something like that, and like maybe they could like say like his whole madness later in the movie was caused, maybe he got like rabies or something from this thing and he went insane.
Yeah,
because it's like all suddenly like he was like trying to escape and he's trying to help the guys he was with, there wasn't a point where he was just like, oh, I'm going to kill these guys because I'm just a crazy son of a bitch. It was just, he was actually trying to escape with these guys. And then after the one guy, the Wishmaster guy got killed, and then he falls, and probably one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen with him falling down that chute. Because it's like the whole thing, he's like just falling head first, like, oh, and then he buries himself in some bones. But he decides that he's going to go insane when we get the two main characters. You get Jane
and John get down there.
Jane and John save him. They pull him out of there, and he's like, "Oh, now I'm bad."
Well, here's the thing. Like, he's been pissed off at John anyway because Jane picked up John, on the road after he'd hit on her one day, and he was like, "Uh-oh," and we get the implied bit that they spent, a nice night together or whatever, and that they're now a thing, right? Because later on, John is telling her, we're going to make it out of here, and they embrace in this big kiss, and I'm like, there's no sexual tension between you two. Like, this is not working, But
because you totally want to kiss somebody after you get done swimming in a water full of blood,
and no telling what else from the rats, right? But you got that, but it's like the foreman becomes the angry ex-boyfriend or jealous ex-husband at that point, and he like punches her in the stomach like hard, and he punches John so many times and they make these sounds like he's breaking his ribs, and I'm like, man, this guy is insane.
I'll give the movie a little bit of credit here, though. Actually, the fight scene's actually not that bad.
No, it's a decent fight. Yeah, I
mean, it's like a lot of times in these movies you can tell like they're swinging at air and they're just adding that sound effect. And it looked like, whoever they had in there, whether these people were doing their own stunts or not, they were getting punched. I mean, you can kind of tell, especially her when she got hit in the stomach. Like, you could actually feel that pretty good when she got slugged. And, I even liked it too when the one guy's on the ground and the other guy, like, jumps at him from the top of the bones and he kind of, like, catches him and throws him into the caskets. I mean,
it was
pretty
very
decent fight scene.
It was very backstage at a WWE fight. Like I felt like the choreography there was good. I'm with you. It was a good fight. And what I love is that they do twist one thing. This is the smartest thing the movie does. The woman comes up from behind to clock the dude on the back of the head with the top of a casket, which in every other movie would knock him out and then they would run away. But all it does is piss him off, and he turns around and like hits her Rambo style in the stomach with his knife and essentially guts her right there on the screen. You talk about brutal.
Yeah, and then I probably the most normal thing you'd see in a movie, like, like I guess in a situation like that, she probably would have knocked him out.
Yeah.
And they would have got up and ran away, and then he would have been left there for the monster, and then, they would have had it out, or he would have woke up and, like, all of the things there and killed him. But
no, the cheap way is they would have got out, lit the place on fire, and the monster and he would have died together down there, and they would have embraced and walked off into the sunset together.
Well, of course, with the monster emerging from the fire at the end for one last showdown.
Exactly, for Graveyard Shift 2, The Reckoning. But that's not what happens. They actually did go smart with it.
Yeah, and that was probably what would happen. You get someone attacking someone with a knife, someone comes up from behind them, they're going to get stabbed, and that's exactly what it does. I
mean, it's a known thing. If you get stabbed in the stomach, you're screwed. I mean, it's very hard to close a wound in the stomach. Like that is nearly lethal on all levels. So, I mean, I applaud the film again for having the gumption to take out a main character that we were, I guess you could say, rooting for at this point. Or at least interested in and somewhat invested in as much as you can be in a movie like this. And then it's a showdown between the two guys. And I love how, he runs off, and we forgot about the part where, like, before they go down in there, he picks up this bottle of whiskey or whatever, and he's rubbing like the black soot all over his face. And I'm like, was he Apocalypse Now? At this point, I mean, he's just going nuts. And, but now, John chases him with like a huge leg bone. He's beating to death with the big bone, but of course, before he can get there, he finds the bat rat hanging from the rafters. And I love the line, "We're going to hell together." And then the rat, of course, is like, "No, I think I'll just take you there myself." And he just devours him. It's like, have you ever seen the movie Beastmaster?
No.
Oh, well, someday we'll get there. There's these creatures that sort of they surround you with their fleshy wings, and then when they drop you out, you're nothing but bones. That's exactly what that looked like. It looked like something right out of the Beastmaster. Really cheesy.
Okay, you got a knife though, and you got this thing hanging there. Probably the stupidest place to stab it would be the wing.
Yeah,
which is where he stabs it.
Why wouldn't you go for the stomach or the heart or the neck? Unless he just wanted to die at that point. Maybe he's so crazy he doesn't know the difference.
But it's just a random turn. It's the guy. He had no death wish before this scene. He wanted to kill it, and now suddenly he's like, "Oh, we're gonna die together," and it's like, "Oh, why? Why do you want to die?"
Yeah,
Again, it'd make more sense if that was his girlfriend or whatever. Maybe he felt bad that she died, and this is like he wanted to get him back, and this was kind of his whole way, was that, hey, I'm going to get all these people together. I'm not going to tell them about this thing, but we're going to go down there and kill this thing, And
maybe
none of that's ever shown or said.
It would have worked at the end too after the woman hits him over the head. If the bat swung down and chomped her and flew her away, and he's like, "Oh hell no, I'm going after her," and that would have made sense. But he killed her, so that can't be his reason for going and trying to take out the bat now. That's nuts. Well, of course, our hero John sees this, and he finally gets back up to the main floor, and he thinks, "I'm okay." And through the wall, as if by
why did he follow him? We got to go.
Yeah.
Why did he follow him? Okay, the girl's dead.
Mm-hmm.
He can kind of tell that he's kind of found a way out, or at least a good chance of finding a way out. The guy who just tried to kill him is now going after the big giant rat that was trying to kill him. Why would you follow him?
Because he had that bone in his hand and he wanted revenge of his own. I don't know. I'm with you. I'm like, man, there's the hole right there. Go, put your thumb out, grab the first trucker out of town, and get the hell out of here.
Yeah, you got to pull a Cartman right now. It's like, screw you guys.
I'm going home. Exactly.
Out of there. But no, he follows him in there, and then of course he's seeing the rat eat the guy, and then he just stands there, he's like looking at him, and it's like, dude, there's no possible good outcome for you just sitting there watching it. And of course, the rat kind of realizes he was there as he runs away.
Well, see, that's what I was going to say. The rat then crashes through the wall where the big picker machine is, as if it was pushed on a cart, because it doesn't look like it's moving on its own. It's definitely got help. It's a terrible effect.
Well, of course, this whole cavern and caves and everything, it all leads up to the first scene in the movie where, this giant picker is located there. Of course, that's where he works.
Yeah, and it ends where it begins, the final showdown. Like, you knew.
I mean, thank God no one ever moved that bag that was covering that hole the whole time they were working there. And then
yeah, at least he had a way to get back in it. That was the point. But the rat shows up, and it's crawling after him in what has to be the longest scene. Here's the thing, though. They set this up early on that John likes to shoot Diet Pepsi cans. Worst product placement ever, by the way. Diet Pepsi cans out of a slingshot to scare the rats away.
See, if this would have been early 90s, this should have been Diet Right.
Something, yeah, Tab, Pepsi free, but something, maybe a Shasta, where this plant was. But the rat is crawling across and the rat gets its tail caught in the end of it, and he sees it's caught, so he picks up the Diet Pepsi can, fires it at the on switch, and in takes 20 minutes for that can to fly in slow motion.
This is how it goes. It goes can flying, slow motion, his face looking,
rat
over to the rat screaming, back to the soda can flying, back to his face, to a rat,
tail free,
to the giant rat, to its tail coming free, back to the soda can hitting the switch, and somehow, even though the tech guy, the rat bat, got its let's call it brat. The brat got its got its tail free from it. When he hits the switch, the tail automatically goes back into it.
Oh yeah, and I mean, just chews it up. And I mean, in like a real gory scene, just rat hamburger, right?
And of course, the tail just wouldn't just get ripped off like it normally would. It just kind of just keeps on grinding them.
Right. Yeah. Just grinds it into nothing. Right. And then that's it. Like half the town is dead. There's a huge body of a rat in the picker. Cotton is ruined forever in this town.
Which the rats are now eating, which is sort of Graveyard Shift too, because all those rats that ate it obviously are all going to turn into big giant rats now.
Right, yeah, they're all eating the blood, and like that one of them, which I call the lead rat, because it kept getting all the FaceTime, looked at him like, Master, and then that was it. Roll credits. And
they all turn into the Jonas Brothers, and that's how that started.
Yeah, and what was that weird end song that had voiceover from the foreman? It was like a rap. What was that?
I don't know. It's a great song, though. I really enjoyed the credits. But even I when I saw this movie though, the first I have like memories back when I saw this in like 91 or 92, whenever it was out on VHS at Pick and Save. But the ending that I saw was a little bit different. After the rat gets all like kind of shoot up and stuff, he kind of gains his composure and he's walking out, and of course he grabs his time clock thing and punches himself out, and then he sees the girl's one, and then he punches her out, and then he walks out, and then hangs up the now hiring sign and walks away.
Wow.
And actually, I did look that up, because when I saw the end of this, I'm like, I remember another scene. And sure enough, yes, that was another scene that was added on the original VHS that they took out for whatever reasons later, because, I don't know, I guess George Lucas is screwing around with our Stephen King's movies now.
Yeah, because that added so much more to it. I'm with you. That would have been nice to see. I guess it would have been somewhat poignant, but it ends on the rat's face, and then the weird rap song, and that's wow. Then we're at the end, and
Graveyard Shift.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow. And I'm only left to wonder how this next bit is going to go. We're at the point of the podcast where it's time to give final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings. What are yours for Graveyard Shift?
I can't go with the small popcorn for this. I'm actually going with the medium popcorn, because even though this movie is not good at all, it's not a good movie, I found myself somewhat not enjoying it, but it's watchable in a very weird way. I don't know what it is, if it's just like how everything that's bad somehow is good in a way. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like one of these movies that's so bad it's good, I guess. It's a clear definition for that for me. So for me, it's going to be medium popcorn. not terrible, not the worst Stephen King movie we've watched so far. That would have to go to Silver Bullet, but it's definitely not one of the best. It's just kind of blah.
Wow, I feel like I'm playing your role now from the Silver Bullet podcast, because I was sitting here going the whole time like, this must be how Nick felt watching Silver Bullet. I think this is one you hold up from your childhood the way I hold up Silver Bullet. I mean, I know Silver Bullet is terrible, but it's so bad it's good and I can enjoy it. Like I said,
But there was no time in this movie, though, that you wanted the wheelchair kid to get eaten by the rat.
I wanted everyone to die. No. Everyone needed to go. And here's the thing is I was watching this, and I think I said it before. There is at least over half of this film that could be totally done away with. And I was so bored with. I was so bored. But I will say this. I think inside of here is a nugget of like a 45-minute episode of The Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, something like that. I think there's a 1-hour story in here that got blown up to try to be an hour and 20 minutes or whatever it is.
It would be a really good episode of like Monsters.
I think it is definitely like a good 45-minute, maybe 50-minute show in here. And I think there could be a decent fan edit of this. Like you just introduce everybody, you get them down in the basement and get to the action and skip all the stuff in between. But I can't give this thing any more than a small popcorn because it looks awful, it's paced terrible, and it is completely forgettable. Rats. I hope I never see it again. So, but it is certain. I would not say it's the worst thing we reviewed. I would say it's the worst thing we reviewed so far in this retrospective, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. There are worse movies, but this one is just middling in so many ways. But
Silver Bullet's worse, Jay. Silver Bullet's worse.
We'll just have to continue to disagree on that. But I am happy to say, I think we are turning the corner here for our Stephen King retrospective because we got some really fun stuff coming up. Now,
Langoliers.
We had talked about before last year when we were doing this that we were going to do Creep Show as a part of this, but in retrospect and kind of looking at it, we couldn't decide if that was more Stephen King or more George Romero and some of the other collaborators. So we decided to pull that one out of the list. We're going to do Christine, the Killer Car. We're going to do Pet Sematary, and then we're going to jump in and do the biggest miniseries Stephen King ever did. What many will argue is his best book, The Stand, is going to be kind of our ender for the Stephen King retrospective that we're doing here. So I'm really looking forward to those three. I happen to think they're going to be very different reviews than what we've had so far. Maybe more back to along the lines of what we had with The Shining.
Yeah, definitely. I am really looking forward to doing The Stand. I haven't seen that since it was actually out. I think it was on ABC when it first came out, probably in the 90s. So yeah. I'm a big fan of the book, and I am really, really looking forward to revisiting it and seeing if it holds up as a semi-decent, portrayal of what Stephen King's best book is.
Yeah, I'm curious to see that. And I'm curious to go back to Christine and Pet Sematary, which are genuinely concocted to be scary films. I think you could make arguments about those. It'll be neat to sort of get into some of those as we head through the better part of this retrospective. But you can listen to the other episodes in this retrospective and others at our website, continuousplaypodcast.com. Click on the film strip logo there, and you'll go in. You can search by keyword or by series or by host and find what you want there. You can also find links to our Facebook and Twitter pages, as well as our other podcasts, The Art of Slang, our Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast, and The Fabish Factor, hosted by Kurt Fabish. And Nick's been on that. I've been on that. It's a general film discussion. And you can check it all out there at our website and join us on our social media to interact with us. Let us know what you think of these films. Are we right? Are we wrong? Or who's right? Who's wrong? Or was it a rat? Was it a bat? Whatever it might be. We appreciate your support. Till next time, for Nick, I'm Jay. Thanks for listening to Film Strip.
Show's over.
Thanks for listening to Film Strip. Visit our website, continuousplaypodcast.com, for more reviews and episodes.
This is bad.
All content used or discussed in this podcast are the property of their respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
Eat 'em for breakfast.
Raw American. This place is infested.
Yeah, maybe. I'm a little prejudiced.